very long time, many would say that King's Cross in Sydney had quite of a split personality. On the one hand, it's been a red light district for many years, known for drug problems, but it's also a popular place to live in. And while its bars and strip clubs are still there, more people are moving in permanently to what is quite a beautiful area. Author and screenwriter Jimmy Thompson has lived there for nearly 30 years and he's written about both sides of King's Cross. Let's welcome him to Studio 10.
Thank you.
Jimmy, some may say that the King's Cross area has received a lot of bad publicity over recent years with so-called alcohol-fuelled violence. Do you think it's a safe place?
Well, I mostly feel safe there. I've been there for 30 years. When I did my last book, The Snitch About the Cross, I remember crossing the street with an armed robber who'd I just interviewed. And I said, you know, I've always felt safe here.
Yes.
And he put his arm around me and said, well, now you really are. And then I didn't feel safe anymore. But generally speaking, you know, if you're not going up there and acting like an idiot, you're going to be safe.
I mean, it's an extraordinary place because I lived there for years and years, and it's one of those places where during the day it's very cosmopolitan. There's lots of artists and sort of creative people and all sorts of things around. And then by night, especially on the weekends, everyone I knew who lived around there would just batten down the hatches and stay home, and everyone would come in from all over Sydney and Australia and the world and just go absolutely crazy, and then you'd sort of re-emerge on a Sunday morning and just sort of clean up the place.
There
are two sides to it. Tell us about them.
Sorry, very, very much so. I remember sitting in a cafe once and everybody moved to the front of the cafe, and it was a Sunday morning, so it was a Sunday morning after a big Saturday night, and what they were looking at was this woman walking down the street wearing a bra and a pair of high-heeled shoes.
Nothing else?
Nothing else. And the manager of the cafe said, yeah, the embarrassing thing is she works here.
Oh, no.
Speaking about the colourful local identities, you can't walk down the Golden Mile without getting enticed by the strip club spruikers. Have they ever gotten you?
Oh, yeah. I was walking down one night with my wife and her mother and her grandmother, and going past this club, and this guy's doing the business, you know, enticing me in with all these promises that they could never possibly keep of what was going on inside. And I said, oh, mate, you know, I live here. You see me every day. And he said, oh, that's all right. Your usual table's free.
Oh, what a cheeky man.
And you've even had some encounters with John Ibrahim, a very colourful King's Cross character.
He is. Very interesting. He's a very successful writer. I remember he sent me the very first stuff he'd written for his book. And I wrote back to him, please tell me you didn't write this yourself. Because it was so good. I mean, the energy and all that in there. Oh, yeah. And it was an interesting process because you know, we drink in the same cafes and things. And he would say, what do you think of this? And various editors would come in on his book. And I realised what was happening was he was going, oh, right, oh, this is how you're supposed to do it. And then he would take it away and rewrite it himself. So, you know, I mean, people say, how can a guy like that suddenly become a writer? Well, I mean, my advice to him was just write.
Because of his voice. He had his voice came through the book.
Yeah, absolutely. And I said, don't try to be a writer.
That's right.
Just tell your story and stop every so often for a moment of reflection, and it'll all come good. And he's done all right.
And as you're saying, there are so many stories from so many people who live at King's Cross. We talk quite a bit about the injecting room that's there and whether or not that should be rolled out across the country. As a resident, are you a fan, a supporter, or not?
100% in favour. You know, you don't see needles in the street like you used to. I mean, there was a point where there was a safe injecting room and a needle exchange, two different places along the same strip. And I thought, really, you know, do we need that much? Now they're down to one place. Addicts can go in, they can get clean kit, they can get support if they need it. If they want to come off the drug, there are people there who will help them and lead them that way. But basically, from our point of view, residents just being able to walk with your kid down the street and not have them pick up a used needle is a huge thing.
The injecting room was obviously when the heroin scourge was sweeping through the Cross in particular and parts of Melbourne as well. Has that changed now with the advent of ice, and has ice changed the Cross and made it more...
I think there are more crazies on the street.
Yes.
And it's very unpredictable. And we read that story the other day about the guy who tackled the bloke who attacked the woman in the supermarket. You know, when there are people like that going around, you start thinking, well, the rules have changed a bit.
Yeah.
Jimmy, we've seen I love King's Cross, and I think it's got such wonderful history, and I always felt safe if I ever went out on the Cross. But do you think it's changed in recent years, and do you think the lockout laws have worked? Because we've heard this so-called alcohol-fueled violence. Do you think it's worked, the lockout laws, and do you think there's other things going on? It's not just alcohol?
Well, the drug thing, the new drugs coming in are making a difference. Alcohol is going to be a problem wherever people drink to excess, and it's not just in King's Cross. I think there's been an over-adjustment, and I think part of it is not just that the pubs aren't open, it's that people have been made scared, frightened to go to the Cross, and that's taken a lot of the life out of King's Cross.
It's very quiet. It's like a little village now. If you go up there, if you go up there, you think it's so different. I sometimes go to the theatre up there, and whereas once you wouldn't walk down the street by yourself, now it's perfectly safe to walk down the street by yourself, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But a lot of the character is gone. You know, I remember when I was a younger woman, it always felt a bit naughty to go to King's Cross, but it wasn't really, and it was fine. It just had a sort of an edge to it that you didn't find anywhere else.
You know, when people like Abe Saffron and Lenny McPherson and George Freeman were running the Cross, there was that thing. They wouldn't allow idiots to come in.
Right.
Correct. They ruled the streets and it worked.
And you know, so people like us could wander around and go and have a drink and a glass of wine and listen to live music and all that, because it was safe, because it was their patch. And now we've over-adjusted and over-corrected.
Well, the whole point of organised crime is that it's organised.
Yeah, that's right.
They don't want muggers and street thugs taking away their legitimate business money.
Well, it used to be the one place you could go in Sydney where you could actually have a drink and something. You had to have something to eat, as I recollect. You had to have a plate of chips or something.
Right.
But it was the only place really in Sydney, say 30, 40 years ago, where you could go and have a drink at 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock at night time.
Yeah. I'll have a bowl of chips and 28 beers.
Well, as Mr. Ibrahim said, it's not organised crime that's the problem, it's disorganised.
That's right.
Yeah, that's right. Now, Jimmy, you're a screenwriter both overseas and also in Australia.
Yeah.
And I read an interesting analogy you had about comparing criminals in the Cross to people in showbiz.
Yes. I should be careful sitting here in Charlottetown.
Right. Watch out.
I did say that, you know, they have the same skill set, but criminals have a more evolved moral code.
No. No
I'm
way.
talking about the producers. It was interesting. When I started writing this book, there's a character in Perfect Criminals who is, you know, he's a sexual harasser. And the publishers were saying, yeah, really? Is that going... Really? Can you kind of tone that down?
That would never happen in real life.
And then Harvey Weinstein comes along, and the publishers are going, yeah, you might want to tone this up a bit.
A bit more colour.
Wow. And you can look out for Jimmy Thompson's latest book. We saw it there. It is called Perfect Criminals, and a great read. Jimmy, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me. Thank you very much.